All right, welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you here today. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Harville, Hendrix, and Helen LaKelly Hunt. These are life partners who've been married for over 40 years. Helen and Harville co-created Imago relationship theory and therapy, and they've trained over 2,500 therapists in over 53 countries. They're the authors of 3 New York Times bestsellers, Getting the Love You Want, Keeping the Love You Find, and Giving the Love That Heals. Harville is also a couples therapist with over 40 years experience as an educator, clinical trainer, and lecturer, and his work has appeared on Oprah 17 times. And Helen is the author of Faith and Feminism, as well as And the Spirit Moved Them. So in today's session, we're going to find out why talking is the most dangerous thing most people do, and listening is the most infrequent. We're going to learn how to engage in dialogue, where each person takes turns talking without judging, listening without criticizing, and connecting around and beyond differences. So at this point, I'd love to turn it over to Helen and Harville. Thank you for being with us here today.
Oh, thank you so much. And we are happy to be here. And Stelly, thanks for that marvelous introduction. Sometimes I wonder who you're talking about, but it's so I'm going to go to share screen, and then we will see what's happening. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. You have to hit the right button for this to work. Okay, there we go. So, so again, we are want to welcome you to this 1-hour session, and thank you for coming. And I'm Harville Hendrix.
I'm Helen.
And we are partners in life and work, as Stelly said, and we are co-creators of Imago relationship therapy, which is a couples therapy. And we are the co-creators of this process called the dialogue process. And in fact, Helen is the originator of the dialogue process in our own relationship. And so our within this frame, what we wanted to do is talk about it at the theory level, what it is, how powerful it is. Then we want to show you a video of a couple engaging in a dialogue process, and then we're inviting you to take a break and or go to Zoom rooms and practice, and then come back, and we as a group, as a whole, will talk about what was that like for you. So that's our view of how this will go. We'll talk, we'll show, and then you'll practice, and then we'll discuss. So that's it. Helen, do you have anything you want to add to this process? Okay, so I think the first thing that I'd like to say is that the focus, our focus in our work is, we might say, exclusively on talking and on enabling, and most people know how to talk, but hardly anybody knows how to listen or listens. And that we put it in a historical context, which is that for all of the thousands of years of human evolution and civilization, talking has had a particular structure, which we call monologue. That is, it has had a vertical structure to it. Somebody at the top talks to somebody all the way down the chain to the bottom, and everybody below the speaker is supposed to, in some way, listen to, assent to, obey, and honor the speaker. And that's been true not only in culture, but in families and in marriges and in intimate relationships.
I'd like to say something I've never said before, really.
Oh, okay.
So this session is about dialogue, but just to mention, from the time when you were born, you were a baby. Well, by the time you were 4 or 5 or 6, maybe you said something, your parents went, "Oh, they speak." The baby's talking. And then you go to school, and you're taught to give a book report, read a book and give a book report. And just growing up, if there's Harville was on a debate team and he was a great debater and he got awards. So we're taught to monologue.
Mm-hmm. And as you often say, people teach us to talk, but nobody in the educational system teaches people to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the only people who are trained to listen are therapists, and they get paid to do it. And many therapists say they don't do that at home with their partners.
Yeah, and so people can go, oh, I love the winter time. I put on a coat and snuggle, and another person go, what? Well, I hate the winter. The summertime is done, so everyone it's dangerous. Suddenly you're fighting about something.
So we finally label talking as the most dangerous thing people do. But we have to use the word how. How people talk makes talking dangerous, and that most of us talk monologically, which also makes it dangerous. And we also discover, and there's research on this, that listening is the most infrequent thing people do. And then we've learned a new thing about listening in the past couple of years, some new research on the capacity of the human ear to accurately hear electromagnetic waves that we call words. And the research registered the average human ear starts with a 70% distortion rate and only a 30% accuracy rate. So that it all of a sudden made sense about how come people misunderstand each other so often. It's not always that they're just distracted. It's how they are distracted, and the fact that the ear doesn't seem to be have evolved over historical time like the vocal cords did. Vocal cords evolved to make sounds because that was a part of being safe and regulating your relationship with others. But the ears only needed to know whether the sound was dangerous, and you had to make effort to use your voice to say something, do something, scare somebody. So this whole thing about talking is the micro interaction of all human beings, and we think that it's the most undeveloped of all the interactions. And in therapy, we work to help couples do something about how they talk, and we don't care what they talk about. If they don't talk about it in a certain way, they can't talk about anything without polarizing. But if they talk about it a certain way, then they can talk about it without polarizing. So we've said that there are two ways of talking. Monologue is dangerous because it creates inequality, because it's speaking down to you, and that inequality produces anxiety. So that whenever anybody is hearing somebody talk, the brain is calculating whether or not the speaker is in fact a dangerous person. So we evolved over time in working with couples a construct and a practice called dialogue. And Helen, you want me to mention Socrates, or would you like to tell them about the first person in history who came up with dialogue?
Well, someone was crediting us for the first time in the history of the world, creating a relational technology for successful talking, and we call it dialogue. And then I put together a little graphic that a man named Socrates, that most people know, had created Socratic dialogue in 300 BC, and the Greeks felt like the young people were getting too opinionated because they listened to Socrates, and they said, stop teaching that. And he didn't stop teaching it, and they put him to death. So here we are doing it.
Yes. And so dialogue went away, and monologue maintained its hegemony. So dialogue is two people talking, taking turns talking and listening. And I want to say how Socrates may have been the first person in a philosophical history to use the word dialogue, but I want to say that Helen actually brought it into life in our relationship in the first few months of our relationship, which was in 1977, when she did what you see on the screen. She and I were talking at each other monologically and with great intensity. And Helen said, "Hey, one of us talk and the other one listen." And now I'm a therapist at this point.
And then we take turns.
And then we take
When
turns.
you talk, I'll listen.
And you didn't say one of us listen. I mean, that we mirror anything back. We just said, you talk and then I'll talk. We'll take turns talking. I don't think we even got to the listening piece.
No,
we just take
not
turns
mirror.
talking.
We didn't mirror.
Didn't mirror, and we didn't indicate that we were listening. But it regulated our emotions at the time. And as a therapist working with couples, I was aware that couples didn't take turns talking and listening to each other. They took turns talking and listening to me as the therapist and to Helen as a therapist, but not to each other. So I took this to the clinic and I put couples in chairs facing each other and facilitated them talk. It took about 6 or 8 years to evolve what we're going to tell you in the next few minutes, called the Imago dialogue process. But basically, it came out of the drudgery of our own relationship. It was helped shaped by couples where we asked, "What about this is helpful, and what else do you need?" And they finally came up with, "We'll need to be mirrored. We need to have some curiosity. We need to have validation, and we need to have empathy." So, but dialogical conversations are not just a minor shift. Dialogue is moving from the vertical axis to a horizontal axis. And this changes the structure of the relationship as well as the direction of words. Dialogue is lateral because this creates equality. Equality creates safety, and safety is the precondition for connecting. So what does this look like? So we define it that dialogue is two people taking turns, talking without criticizing. This is really important. And listening without judgment, which means that when you're talking, you have to cut out any sort of predication to the person you're talking to. And if you're listening, you have to shut down the negative narrative that we often run while somebody else is talking, so that you can connect beyond difference. And now you have the environment of safety. This is a micro repetitive interaction that produces emotional and physical safety. And that is necessary for connecting to occur, and connecting is necessary for relationships to thrive. So the second thing that happens beyond connecting is a paradox, which is you also differentiate. When you're talking and listening, you are beginning to share your own inner world with each other, and that inner world gets heard by the other without judgment, but with curiosity. Then we differentiate, that is, the fantasies we have of each other begin to be replaced by the actual reality of the other person as they put themselves into language. So then we can connect beyond our differences. So let's move now into the mechanics of this, because we'd like for you not only to hear about it in this short period of time, but to see and to practice it. So it is a 3-step process. It evolved into a 3-step process and has the two actors are the sender and the receiver. And the 3 steps is that the sender and receiver speak to each other, they mirror each other, they validate each other, and they empathize with each other. And we actually ask them to and train them to do this in a structured way, because we discovered that the structure is what keeps them in the process, in the conversation, and prevents the breakdown and prevents disconnecting. Structure creates safety. So we finally got that. We're so convinced about that we make it an aphorism. Structure is necessary for safety. So there's no free flow in the dialogical process. It's facilitated by the use of sentence stems. And you see the sentence stem here. The sender always starts a conversation with a request for an appointment. Can we make an appointment? And there's a sentence stem. And I say to Helen, whenever I walk into the kitchen, Helen, are you available for a conversation? Is now a good time to talk?
One of the worst things is if people want to talk, they assume the other person is ready to listen, and the other person might be in the middle of something, and it's irritating. So one of the most important things is to say, is now a good time that I can tell you about a problem? And you have to say what it is. A problem that I experienced in a relationship yesterday, or is now a good time when I could talk to you about some movies that I'd like to see. And the other person may be wrapped up in something, and then the other person has to say yes or no. And if it's no, they have to say when they can have the appointment.
Right. And the reason the appointment is so important is that without it, you violate the other person's boundaries, because everybody is living in their own narrative. They're running a movie in their minds about what is going on for them in memory or in imagination. And when you just walk up, if I just walk up to Helen and start telling her, you know what I heard about, or I just had this thought, or I saw this movie, I'm asking her to run my movie on her movie screen where she's already running a movie. So there's obviously going to be some tension about that. Now, if she was upset about that, she would say, no, I'm not available. If she's really nice and sort of compliant, she'd say, well, okay. But in any case, it's a boundary violation. So we ask people, couples, and everybody that we teach this to, and we teach it now to everybody, to know that when you want to talk to somebody, ask them, is it okay? Rather than just assuming that they're sitting there waiting for you. Then you're the sender, and then you'll start talking about what you want to say. The receiver says, okay, well, let me see if I got that. If I got it, you said. And then they say back, and they use that sentence stem, then they say back exactly what they heard this sender say, either word for word or in a paraphrase, depending on how the sender wants to be mirrored. And then the second thing is, remember that ear that only hears 30% accuracy. So it's important that when you say, did I get it? That you say, did I get it? In other words, to check for accuracy. Then the next piece makes the dialogue really come alive. Instead of saying, okay, I got it, now I'd like to talk, you say, the receiver instead says, is there more about that? And you ask it not in a, is there more about that? Or do you have more to want to say about that? Not like that. It's like with curiosity. Is there more about that? With interest. And then you mirror until there is no more. And then when the person says, no, that's all I'm coming up with, then you say, well, let me see if I've got everything you said. Let me see if I've got it all. Then you mirror in a very condensed statement the essence of what the message were. Then you can say, well, now that I've got that, you make sense. And what makes sense is, and you see and you tell them what makes sense. Because of this, it makes sense that they would think that and do that and feel that.
That makes sense is not agreement. It's understanding where the other person is coming from, and given that, what they said makes sense.
Yeah.
So in other words, it makes sense. Well, that makes sense to you. And or I can see how you feel that, and try to make it okay that they vote for a different political party than you do, or something that you think another way, but in this moment, make it safe for them to be them.
And to add to that, everybody lives in their own world. And they make sense in their world. Most of us say, we don't make sense because you don't live in my world. And I don't agree with that. That's not even the point. Nobody sees another person's world exactly, because every world is different. So to say you make sense means I see how you are making sense in your world. And I accept that and honor that. And that's not a devaluation. That is, I'm finally seeing you. This is the differentiation process. Then you say, gosh, and given that experience you've had, you must be feeling, or you might be feeling. So then you go to empathy. And those three things, now they're taught in a rigid and structured way and practiced until they become spontaneous. And then conversation moves into safety all the time. So just to rerun this for a minute, the structure of dialogue is facilitated by the use of specific sentence stems. And these are the sentence stems. Is now a good time to talk? Let me see if I got it. Did I get it? Is there more? Did I get it all? And that's the first step is mirroring. And for the length of time we have today, that's all of the time we have for that. And we're just going to do mirroring. This is the most important thing. And later on, and you have a sheet, I'm hoping that you've downloaded it or that it's available on your computer so you can see mirroring and appreciation, because we're going to go to that now. And
yeah, Harville, I just put that in the chat for folks. So hopefully you all can download it from your chat. And
yes.
Also, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A and we can answer those throughout the session.
Right. Please download it so you can go through this structured process. And it's in the chat. Thank you for doing that. And also filter questions through to Stella, and she will interrupt us to ask that. So there's the mirroring process. That's what we're going to do. Now, Helen's going to talk about how to set this up.
So look in the eye is important. And Harville has used two hilarious pictures. And in your partner's mind and your mind, you need to shift from the glare to the gaze. And most of us, we're so wrapped up in our tech things, and also we're busy and we're rushed, and we don't realize that to the other person that we're going to talk to, we don't have a look that's very inviting. And so the look on people's faces is important. Plus, you can regulate a dialogue if you're the receiver and your partner is, or the person speaking is sending you, and it's wordy. And so it's feel free to raise your hand and say, I'm getting overloaded. Could I just mirror what I've heard so far and then finish? But anyway, you can regulate how much to mirror.
And when people are practicing, we ask them also to take roles, sender and receiver, and decide who's going to go first. So that when you set it up, say, oh, I'll start it. I'll receive.
Well, if the person is asking for the appointment, they're the sender.
Yeah. The sender asks for an appointment.
And so just know, then you have a title, you're the sender, and the other person is not going to send anything. Their job is to receive the words of the sender respectfully, even though they're going to set up another appointment and talk about they totally disagreed.
Yeah.
But you take turns growing,
turns.
but you're feeling you're both safe in the relationship.
So there'll be
you can say, well, let's go for a therapist, and you get the problem solved.
So there'll be a sender and a receiver, and they'll take turns.
Yeah.
So how much time for each person? That's one of the questions that came up.
I think that, let's see, we've got 35 minutes left. I think we can give I'm going to show a short video that's
I
about
think-
5 or
I
6
think-
minutes. So I think we can probably have about 8 minutes each.
But I'm just going to
And
say,
let's get to it.
if the question is about in dialoguing, it's good to make it a short,
Hmm.
talk about something short.
Yeah, so I think we'll put them in breakout rooms for, let's see, there are going to be 3 people in each room. And we want all 3 of them to send and receive using that. And they'll have to work out if it were 2. I don't know if the breakout rooms can be limited to 2, Stelly, can they?
Sure, we could do 2 if you prefer.
2 will work better. Then it's clearly a dialogue and they won't have to go around and one person listen twice. Then
Okay.
we can then give them 10 minutes each in the room so they can go through it slowly and carefully. Then we'll come back after that and people will say what it was like to do it.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and put Mike, did you get that 2 per room?
Just finishing that up right now. Just 2 seconds, folks.
Okay. All right. So we're going to show you now a short video so you can see what we mean by mirroring and appreciation.
This is what we call making an appointment. And Easton, it's really a good habit to get into. Harville and I do it, about 5 or 10 times a day these days. We ask each other, is now a good time for me to share so-and-so? Because if it's not a good time, Harville can go, oh, actually, I'm in the middle of another thought. I'm strategizing another plan. But how about in 30 minutes? Or how about in 2 hours? And so this is called respect of Sahar's boundaries. And just coming in and start talking to her, even if it's an appreciation, it's sort of a boundary violation. So this making an appointment sounds a little formal, but it becomes a part of life where 2 people are just relating to each other so much more respectfully, honoring each other's boundaries. So she has said yes, she's available, and you all are making eye contact. And as you continue to make eye contact, and maybe take a deep breath or 2, be aware that you may have had a busy day and you've been multitasking, and sometimes we don't realize we sort of have a glare because we're busy. And experience your eyes relaxing and your pupil size relaxing. And Harville and I call that shifting from the glare to the gaze as you look at each other. And when you begin to share the appreciation, and Sahar, as you mirror, there's a way you can regulate the mirroring to make sure you're getting it right. If he begins to speak in a way that you get on overload, you can raise your hand. We call it the pause button, and say, Easton, let me mirror back what I've heard so far. You can sort of interrupt his process to make sure that you're able to follow his words and mirror him in just the right way.
So Easton, I'm going to give you sentence stems for sending, and Sahara, I'm going to give you sentence stems for responding. And I'd like you to use the sentence stem I give you exactly as I give it to you so that it will regulate the flow of the conversation. Is that okay? So the first sentence stem is Sahar. The appreciation I have for you is.
Sahar, the appreciation I have for you is I really appreciate how whenever you look at me, you smile.
So if I got that, your appreciation of me is.
Your appreciation of me is that you really love it when I look into your eyes and I smile.
Did I get that?
Did I get that?
Yes, you did.
Is there more about that?
Is there more about that?
Yes, there is.
The more is?
And the more is that when you smile, it makes me feel very happy and cared for.
So if I got that, when I smile, it makes you feel very happy and cared for. Did I get that?
Yes, you did.
Is there more about that?
Is there more about that?
Yes, there is. And the more is that when I feel that way, I feel very loved and relaxed, and everything else seems to go away.
And if I got that, it make you feel very happy and loved and relaxed, and everything else seems to go away. Did I get that?
Yes, you did.
Is there more to that?
No, there's not.
So I want to add that the more is that when I feel, look at you and appreciate you and feel loved and happy, I have a childhood memory. I remember when I was little.
Childhood memory could be something like that was in your childhood, or it could be that was missing in childhood, but something from your past that comes to mind.
So the more is that when I feel like that, it reminds me of in my childhood, when my grandmother would always see me and would smile at me and wave hello.
So if I got that, it reminds you of when you were a child and your grandmother would see you and smile at you and wave hello.
Did I get that?
Did I get that?
Yes, you did.
Is there more about that?
Is there more about that?
Yes, there is. The more about that is that anytime she would come and smile and say hello, she would always give me a really big hug and stay with me for a while. And that made me feel really special.
If I got that, every time she would come over and smile at you and wave hello, she'd always give you a really big hug and she would stay with you, and it made you feel very special. Did I get that?
Yes, you did.
Is there more about that?
No, there's not.
So let me see if I've got all of that.
So let me see if I've got all of that.
Your appreciation of me is?
Your appreciation of me is that you appreciate when I look at you that I always smile, and it makes you feel very happy and loved and relaxed, and it makes everything else go away. And it reminds you of your childhood when your grandmother would come and smile at you and wave hello every time she would see you, and she would give you a really big hug and stay with you for a long time. And it made you feel really happy and special.
Did I get it all?
Did I get it all?
Yes, you did.
So thank you for sharing all that with me.
Thank you for sharing all that with me.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
So now you get to give each other a 1-minute full body hug. Okay, move toward each other and stand as close together as possible and breathe in and out together for 1 full minute with your eyes closed, and only experience holding each other, feeling each other, and feeling each other's breathing and resonance. Okay, so now we want to invite you to practice that. Hopefully you've downloaded your script, and we just do it one way so that you can see how it goes. But we invite you to go both ways. Now you may say, hey, you may be put in a Zoom room with a stranger. How are you going to do an appreciation? And our answer to that is, there's always something about a person you meet that you can appreciate. Maybe like if it was with Stelly, I could say, Stelly, I really appreciate how your eyeglasses are so nicely framed on your face.
Well, and wearing a white, she looks like an angel. But then her hair's an interesting color.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So you get the point. Pick out something, the smile, the earrings, the hair, or if you're looking at a guy, his haircut or lack of a haircut or shirt or whatever.
Or maybe
Just
they remind you. You remind me of my brother, just your appearance or something.
So pick something to appreciate. It's the topic. The important thing is the process, to know that the topic gives you the horse to ride on. The horse is the dialogue process. So, and as you go now into your Zoom rooms, one of you will decide who's going to go. Y'all decide who's going to go first. And we're going to give you 10 minutes each, because as you can see, it has some complexity to it. about a childhood memory. And when you get, and I'm going to call time at the end of the 10 minutes, that means you switch and the second person sends an appreciation. Then when you finish, we'll all come back to the room together and share some experiences of what happened for you during that practice. So off to the Zoom room.
And while we're in the breakouts, I'm just going to pause the record.
Okay.
So ready, we'll be returning in about 50 seconds time.
All right. And if you want to put us in gallery view, or do you do that after?
Yeah, big gallery, and everybody can see everybody, would make it kind of a group.
So all I can do is just remove the spotlight. If everybody is welcome to switch to gallery view on their own, if they just go to the view in the top right corner of Zoom, you can switch from speaker to gallery view.
All right. Looks like folks are joining us in the room. You're welcome to be in this gallery view. And if you want to take off put on your cameras, and I believe we're going to do some sharing, right, Harville? Do you want to lead us in that?
Right. So let's see. How many people do we? There are only
just 10 seconds left in the breakouts, and everybody will be returning.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Great. So welcome back from the practice. And if you'd like to show your face, you can take off your camera and what we invite you to do is to share what was your experience of doing the mirroring process, the first step of dialogue. And you can focus on the appreciation if you want to, but what was it like to do that process and to do an appreciation with it? And then after we've given you an opportunity to share, if somebody would like then to ask a question, do that. Then if you want to share, at the bottom of your screen, there's a reaction button. And if you click it's a little smiley face. And if you click that, it'll give you a choice to raise your hand, which will put a hand over your head like the one over mine. Then that will put you in the queue. Then once you talk, go back to the same place and do lower hand, and that will move to the next person. So who would like to share what your experience was mirroring and appreciation? What an interesting group of people. I'm sure you're full of thoughts.
Yeah, Julie and BJ have their hands raised. I think.
Hey, there they are. Go for it, BJ.
Okay, thank you. It was great to be in the room with two other people, so I got to see an example first. And I found the experience like I could tell that it would be helpful if I had it down, if I had it memorized and ready to go, but I felt appreciated even just in those few moments. And so, I thought it was a good process.
Yeah, I gotta laugh because who has time to appreciate anything? And so you watch two other people, you weren't even appreciated and you enjoyed it. So yeah.
Yeah.
I did. It worked out great because, I'm sorry. I did get to be appreciated. We did all three of us. So it worked out.
Great.
Yeah.
So you divided up the time and each person got a piece of the cake.
Harv and I have thought, what if in Congress, before people debated a bill, they first turned around and expressed an appreciation about something, and then they debated the bill and they just totally disagree with the bill, but there's something that you can appreciate, that it sort of creates a different energy.
Yeah.
So Julie.
Yes, I really like the process, and I've done something similar like this before. And I realized that if the sender could speak in just one sentence at a time, and then maybe expand it to 2. Then as a receiver, as I'm practicing, it would be easier for me to be able to repeat it all.
Ah,
Yeah, you regulate the other person respectfully.
Mm,
you raise that hand, regulate,
right.
let me mirror. And it's important to do that because, as we said, our ears just don't have good receptors. They're not good receptors. I think that's why God had to give us 2 of them, because both of them. Is there more, Julie?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. And Fran,
Hello.
hi.
So I found this exercise very interesting, but also very difficult. And I was able wonderfully to participate as both sender and receiver. However, I guess this is kind of I don't know if I'm allowed to ask a question yet. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
we'll just share first, and then let's come back to questions.
Or can you make your question a statement?
Yes. I found through going through this process that it might be significantly more difficult for me to participate in this within like a heated argument in which one or more partners are activated. So that's just something that I noticed.
Okay, so Fran, that's a perfect comment. And let me share something with you, if I may. A heated argument, it's less likely for the 2 people to feel good at the end. And if 2 people will use dialogue instead of the heated argument, it is possible. So the dialogue puts you in the neocortex, and that's a healthier part of your brain where you're curious about the other person and you wonder, and then you take turns and, and can you say more about that? And this puts you in the really, really healthy brain. Whereas if 2 people are in a heated argument, both of them are monologuing, and monologuing is another part of the brain that releases adrenaline and cortisol. It's unhealthy neurochemicals. And is there more about that? Releases dopamine, acetylcholine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, and they're relaxing.
Yeah. And just in terms of, I think your question was, you're in the heat of an argument. What do you do about dialogue at that point? And what we would suggest is that you have to learn how to regulate yourself. And one thing is take a time out for a few seconds or a minute, and then switch to whoever's willing to step up to the plate to say, okay, I'm going to listen and mirror you.
Yeah.
So you tell me what you want to say. In other words, you go to curiosity toward the partner that's upset with you. If you can go to curiosity and listen, you'll find that will regulate the interaction dramatically. But if you go to counter judgment, it will escalate. And you know that already, it will escalate. So one person has to go into, as Helen said, the prefrontal cortex with, so tell me what's happening for you, or let me mirror you back. And either way, you're up here, not in your amygdala, and that will regulate you. But it takes practice to do that.
Yeah,
because most of us are just spontaneously
when we
reactive.
were dating, we were arguing a lot. And eventually we said, look, okay, one of us talk and one of us listen.
Yeah.
So, and that began the
And that did
dialogue
it.
process.
So
But
we've
we
got
felt better.
about 3 minutes, and maybe for one more question before we sign off. Anybody else have a question or a comment? Thank you, Fran, for your comment question. It was a very good one and very natural.
I have a question about asking, is there more when somebody is appreciating you? That felt very awkward saying, like, are there any more compliments that you have for me? I mean, it felt awkward. And so I wonder if that is something that one could just do one thing and say, thank you. after I repeat it and say, did I hear you correctly?
Yeah. We encourage you to do the is there more, because we're all pretty accustomed to sending something and then changing roles. What we're not accustomed to is sending something and deepening it.
And if there's
So-
not more, the person can say
Just
no,
can say, no, there's no more.
that's it.
So you're right, you have that.
But they feel respected. The phrase "is there more" is often credited as being the most important phrase in the dialogue process, because it's like the other person, what they're saying, it really matters.
Yeah,
It's not, when is it my turn to talk? It's
Like-
like I'm available to hear more, but yeah, if there isn't, they feel respected that they were asked.
one of the missing qualities in most relationships is curiosity. And that may sound like you got to be kidding. Yes, most of us are not curious. We're judgmental. And but if you can back up to curiosity without judgment, then you remove the major stumbling block to connecting and to being in a peaceful thing. And I'm aware we're now at the hour, and I turn this back over to, oh yes, there's our book. Thank you, Gabe. Yes.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's an old copy though. You should upgrade.
Yeah, first edition. I'll get the next edition next time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just had it on my bookshelf
Thanks,
next to me.
thanks for showing it.
Thank you all so much.
back to
Harville,
you.
do you have a link to that video that you shared? That was really beautiful. Is that on your website or
It's
no?
not on the website.
But you can purchase it
By the
with
way-
several other exercises. We do 4 exercises.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can be purchased.
Yeah, and we also do it in our workshop. Are you going to send out slides like this to people? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have their information other than registration. We trying to think.
If you go to a website called Safe Conversations, this is the toolbox for couples. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I can go there.
And
Yeah,
if
go
you
to
want to
Safe
purchase-
Conversations and click on the toolbox for couples, and it's in that toolbox.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you all so much, both for the participation and for your wisdom, Harville and Helen. We really appreciate your presence here today. Been great.
We are always honored, and we appreciate all of you who came, and Stelly and your team for inviting us to be a part of this magnificent conference.
Yeah, thank
Hope it
you.
all goes well. We'll see you down the path.
All right, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Right.